We've read the reaction the school had to the notice of allegation. I just wondered personally how you feel having your reputation questioned.
The way I look at this is I believe that my job as the University of Kansas coach is to be the caretaker in the time in which I'm there as of the in my biased opinion, the most historic basketball program in the country based on all the tradition and history. And it's also my job not only to promote that, but to protect those that have given their heart and soul to the place that came before us. And so that is more of that is what my concern would be, as opposed to my personal my legacy or whatever. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I'm old and getting older, obviously, by the day in some ways, but I do not feel that I'm even at a point in time in my career where I'm even remotely concerned about a legacy. But I am concerned about the state of our program and certainly how others view that. And so that's been my concern. When you care about something so much and you love something so much, and you've given basically your, in your own way, your heart and soul to a place for a period of time like we have, how could it not impact you personally in some way? But it's also motivated me too. So there'll be a silver lining, I believe, at some point in time. It's not now, but certainly I do believe there'll be one at some point in time.
That makes it sound like, Bill, that you assume when this is all said and done, you and Kansas will prevail in this. I mean, if that's
there's no question. Yeah. I mean, prevail. I mean, there's been a lot of things that's happened in college athletics with over time, in which you look back 5 years from now or 5 years after that fact, and you say, well, they went through some stuff, and we're going through some stuff now, and absolutely Kansas will always prevail, always. And I'd like to think that I will as well, but I think the school is obviously much more important than an individual is. But there is 100% confidence that Kansas will prevail, and it will not lose any of the tradition-rich thoughts of how this university and what it's meant to our game over time. That will not ever be affected.
I want to give you a chance to answer this directly. I know it's been sort of addressed in some of the statements, but have you ever arranged for or requested payments from TJ Gasnola or anyone for any of your prospects, players, or their affiliates?
That's a fair question, and it has been answered. And I'm not going to talk, and I have answered that, and adamantly so. But I'm not going to rehash what I've answered. I have been told that there is no other comments after the school and myself did their initial comment after the NRA. There will not be any comments until the proper time comes, and certainly not address any details. And that will not happen at this time. But to the question that you asked, it's been answered in emphatic form.
Can you say yes or no?
I can say yes. I'll refer to my prior statements, absolutely.
Bill, is it distracting sometimes that you get other programs and you guys are always the ones that are mentioned, and then you had to go through this last year at the same exact time in Media Day, and now this you're going through it again? Is there any type of distraction that it's always Kansas' name that's brought up?
It seems like to me it's been Kansas' name brought up for not just this. There's always seems like there's something, but not negative. I mean, there's fighting to get a kid eligible. There's some uncertainties with all programs moving forward. There's coaches here right now that don't even know who their full roster is going into this season. That is something that happens in college athletics. Last year, obviously, it was a distraction because at this particular moment last year, if I'm not mistaken, the trial was going on, and so naturally this would be the talk of what's going on, and so. I understand that, and I understand that the media has a job to do, and they've got to ask questions, and they got to ask questions that certainly they feel that needs to be answered. And I do believe I've addressed the questions that have been asked of me in every manner that I can address them at this time. That's it. So is it a distraction? It's not for our players. I guarantee I can't speak to these three dudes, but I would think that they would say, Coach said he'd handle all this stuff. This is, we're just going to play. And I do think from a unification standpoint, I do think it's brought us together in a way where maybe, hey, let's all go, fight for each other even harder than what we normally would. But I don't like it. But it's something we got to deal with, and it's not something that players need to deal with. It's something that I got to deal with, and I've learned to deal with it, I think, much better over the past year.
How often are you dealing with it or updated on the response and things like that? I mean, is it daily or is it weekly or?
Well, it's not daily. It's the information is in the hands of attorneys, and they're the ones that'll create the response. It won't be the basketball coach. So at some point in time I may be involved, but I haven't been involved hardly at all.
Yet?
Not hardly at all up until this point.
You said Coach, the series with Missouri, how did that all come about, and were you on board from the very beginning?
Well, going back to 2012, I wasn't on board, but I do think that there was never hard feelings like we hate them, we're going to do this to the sentiment that I had, and I think that it's kind of lost, is the same sentiment that everybody else at our school had, was anybody can do what is best for them. But if that affects how somebody reacts to it, that's their business too. So Missouri did what they felt like was best for them in 2012, which I got good. That's fine. And we did what we thought was best for us at that time. The thing that has happened is this. And this is evident to me. I miss the game. I miss the game. I miss being at a place where I love playing in games that have national implication. And the one thing about it is, even if it's a rivalry game, and even if we're both not ranked, it will have that same feel of national implications. So I love playing in the games that matter the most, and this game matters to our fan base as much as anybody. But that wasn't enough to get me to want to do it before. But when we played the disaster relief game, what they call showdown relief game, and this place sold out 19 in 41 minutes and raised all that money for a game that didn't matter. Didn't matter who won. And everybody left out of there. It was a win-win is the way I felt, and I certainly felt the same way. So I kind of started thinking about it some, and then the last thing is, and this is true if you understand scheduling at all, scheduling's changed. It used to be you have 16 league games, and so you have the opportunity to schedule 15. Now you have, most leagues are going to 20 league games, and so the teams that we would be trying to schedule in their conference are playing 20, and then how many other games are scheduled for them already? 3 for an exempt tournament, 1 for ACC Challenge, 1 for a Big East Challenge, 1 for a Champions Classic. And all of a sudden now you're getting to just guarantee games. So the opportunity to have games like this, unless they're already built in, are not as apparent as what they were in the past. So I think it's a win for everybody. I do. We did it because it was good for us, but I think it'll be good for the city as well.
You said the NCAA situation was motivating you. How so? How is it?
I think whenever I would say anyone, but I can't speak to anyone. But with me, whenever I feel like that if I have to pass a test when I was in college and there was pressure on to graduate, you had to do this, your focus would be greater at that moment, at least in my world, to do as well on that, as opposed to, hey, you can make a D or C, it doesn't really matter or whatever. I feel like that I'm taking the final test. So my focus is locked in on this year's team. So I do think that'll help. That's probably a terrible analogy. I just thought of that off the top of my head, which I'm not very good at doing.
What we know about the case is based on the text messages and what's come out in the federal trial.
Yeah.
So if we had access to all of your correspondence, if we had the full context of the conversations you had, what would we know about you and how you conduct business?
I'm not going to speak to, like I said, I'm not going to speak to any details concerning the case, but I do, to speak to your last point without going into details of the case, anybody that's ever played for me or worked for me knows how I go about my business. And I'm very proud of how we conduct our business over time, and that hasn't altered at all in the time in which I've been a head basketball coach.
Coach, you mentioned you thought Kansas would prevail.
university, the program.
Positively. I mean, we're talking. Yeah, we're going through some stuff now.
Is there a real fear that there could be postseason ban, things like that? And can you still prevail if something like that even happens?
I'm not going to speak to any details. Well, I'm not. That's a question that I think is a legitimate question. But if you go back and look at history, you would know the answer to that if you just look at history. And without giving examples, but there's been some teams in recent memory that have gone through that are top 10 programs, maybe top 5 preseason this year. So I don't believe that would be true. Kansas is bigger than Bill Self. Kansas is bigger than any player that's ever played here. Kansas is bigger than any team that's ever played here. When you talk about Kansas, you're talking about a whole different realm of now you could say an individual will Bill Self prevail, but don't throw in we're our school. This is 120 years of excellence that will not be judged by this moment in time, regardless of how it comes out, and we're very confident that we do know how it will turn out.
Since you